Retirement is not just the absence of a job, it's a complete and total change of lifestyle. Anyone who tells you differently has probably never been permanently retired. Sometimes that lifestyle change means traveling the world. Other times it means quietly pursuing a personal passion. But 100% of the time, it means that a retiree will spend their money differently than when they did during their working years. This video discusses 10 things that people stop buying in retirement, not because they're forced to, but either because they've earned the right to or they no longer need to. Let's get into it, but before we do, know that this channel has hundreds of videos dedicated to improving retirees in their retirement lives, and many of the upcoming videos will discuss things that are both important and even urgent in some cases. So make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. I post once, sometimes even twice a week, depending on what's happening in the world. All right, I'm going to move through these rather quickly, so let's go. Point number 1 is anything high maintenance. When you retire, you have the right to have a low maintenance home, a low maintenance car, low maintenance clothes, a low maintenance lifestyle. It doesn't make you lazy. It doesn't make you different than other people. You've paid your dues and now is your time to enjoy life completely. The next point is updated versions of technology. Let's face it, when a new version of technology comes out, we dutifully take out our credit card and we purchase it, more often than not. In some instances, like virus protection, it makes perfect sense. We always want to stay one step ahead of the bad guys. But in most instances, it doesn't make sense. Do we really need the latest iPhone, for example? For most people, the answer is no. They may not even be able to tell the difference between the old iPhone with a software upgrade and the new iPhone. But yet, they go out and they buy it anyway. The same could be said about software. I'll give you a good example. My daughters, who do a lot of the Photoshop work on this channel, tell me that there isn't a big difference between Photoshop 2021 and 2023. I can't attest to this personally, but they are whizzes on the software, so I have to take that at face value. They say the 2023 version has some things that are a little bit more intuitive, but by and large, the same 10 or 15 functions that they use on 2021 are those used on 2023. They aren't using anything new. The same holds true with a lot of other tech. Most of the time, a company will release a new version because they want to sell you an entirely new product. And they can't sell you a new product unless they have something different to offer you. Oftentimes, different doesn't mean better, and frankly, oftentimes different means worse. I can think of a lot of products that I used 10 years ago. The software was much better then than it is now because it's all web-based, which is slower than based on downloading that software onto the PC. The next item is books. The average number of books in a large bookstore is less than 10,000. I'm sure that there is a superstore out there somewhere that has more than 10,000, but if you walk into even the largest bookstore and you started counting books on the shelves, it would be hard to find more than 10,000. By contrast, if you were to walk into a city public library, that library would have hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of books. The New York City Public Library in Manhattan, by the way, has over 4 million books. And of course, just about anything that you can find on the bookshelf in a bookstore can be checked out from a public library for absolutely no cost. The next point that people shouldn't pay for are souvenirs. Let's face it, when we travel, when we go on vacation, we want to remember that moment. And there's nothing better than that talisman sitting on the shelf at the gift shop that reminds us of the vacation. But remember, most of these just sit in a box, a drawer, or a bag, never to be seen again, or at least not for many, many years. Knowing this in advance will save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars over the course of your retirement, and there is a better way. And the good part is that knowing what you actually want out of that talisman is to recapture that memory again and again and again. And knowing that means that you can simply use things that you already own to do that. The phone on your camera, for example, is used specifically for capturing that moment at the luau, where you and those that you love were amazed at the Hawaiian dancer who was twirling the stick that was on fire. How can you do this? Well, the good news is that it's absolutely free. There are only 3 things that you need to own, and you already own them. The first is the phone on your camera. That phone on your camera is the best way to capture that moment and review it again and again. The second is a decent journal where you can write down what you were thinking at the time that photo was taken. And the third is the software that's built into the phone. Most of the time, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, there's software on that phone where you can categorize those very special photos and have them display again and again on a rotating basis. If you don't know how to use the software, if you own an iPhone, Apple will show you how to use that function on the iPhone or the iPad. If you have an Android, well, you may need to watch a YouTube video. The point is, would you rather own a 2-inch tiki god from the luau or one fantastic photo taken at that luau of you and your family that you and they can cherish for the years ahead? The next no-fly zone, so to speak, is the absolute newest fashion. For those of you who know anything about the fashion world, you will know that Gianni Versace, the face of Versace, passed away way too young at 50 years old. And if you do know fashion, you know that the Versace Medusa is something one can spot across the room. It is that dramatic, and it's usually surrounded by gold and black or some other glittery color that makes it stand out. Versace is reminiscent of Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, and the clothing is owned by people with a lot of money, usually, or those that want to appear as if they have a lot of money and really know their fashion. But here's the important point. Versace also has other clothing that doesn't bling out like that. In fact, if you look at the clothes that Gianni Versace wore himself, he typically was not wearing a lime green shirt or something similar. He was wearing oftentimes a black polo or a black t-shirt, a pair of jeans, and maybe even a brown leather jacket. You wouldn't see him out peacocking bright colors because frankly that's not what a 50-year-old does. Most of the time, those who are older wear more conservative, more classic clothes that you can wear today, tomorrow, next year, 5 years, and even 10 years into the future, and they look just as good on you. This is fortunate because the latest fashions cost a lot of money, and they're usually owned by people in their 20s and 30s, oftentimes pursuing a life partner. This isn't to say that one can't dress well, but you don't need to wear runway quality clothes when you're on your way to the golf course, running an errand, or just out doing a bit of shopping. The next point, and it's an obvious one, is your mortgage. By the time you retire, it is a really good idea to have your mortgage paid off. Now, there is an ongoing debate about this point because mortgages currently are 3% if you've taken them out in the last 5 years or so, plus or minus a bit. But if you had the funds and you invested it, even in riskless U.S. Treasury securities, you can get between 3.5% and 4% currently. So doesn't that mean that you should take all of your funds and invest them rather than pay down your mortgage, especially if it's at 3%? Well, there is a difference between a point-in-time argument and an over a period of time argument. And the point-in-time argument is a weak one. Let me explain. If you won the lottery tomorrow and you took a $200,000 portion of your lottery winnings and used that to pay off your $200,000 mortgage, you could argue that the better choice, especially if you had a 3% mortgage, was to invest that $200,000 in a 20 or 15 or 25 year U.S. Treasury note or U.S. Treasury bond, paying 4%. At that point in time, if you suddenly receive a big payment from the lottery commission and you can invest it at 4%, it makes more sense in many cases than paying off a 3% mortgage. But most people don't win the lottery, and most people don't have a 4% fixed guaranteed Treasury yield available to them over the life of their mortgage. So if you're just paying the minimum, which is what the other choice is, then you'll be faced with situations where you can invest and Treasury yields are higher, they're lower, they may even not be something you put your money into. Maybe you put your funds into other investments like equities, which are extremely variable. The point is that the cash flow from the mortgage or the lack of cash flow from a mortgage will definitely be felt when you're in retirement. But if you freed up your mortgage and all of that extra cash flow is just flowing right into you for other things, it is definitely a game changer. It almost doesn't matter what the interest rate is on your mortgage If it's gone, the cash is available for you to use on other things. Next is a second car. During our working years, especially if you have a dual income family, the couple oftentimes, in fact, rarely goes to the same building or even in the same direction in many cases. So there's a need for two cars. One goes one way, one goes the other. And in some instances, you have one parent who works, another who stays home with the children, and they both need an automobile for different reasons. One to get to the office, the other to take the children around to their activities and to school, of course. But with two cars comes two car payments, two insurance payments, two parking spots. Many times you have to pay for parking, and wear and tear on two cars. Couples find that in retirement they do a lot more together than they did during their working years, and one car may sit unused. Sure, they may switch from one to the other back and forth, but you can only drive one car at a time, especially if there are two of you in that same car. If this sounds like you, perhaps this is a sign that you don't need that second car. The next expense you no longer need to incur is professional clothing. Most of the time when someone works, they wear some uniform of some sort. Whether that uniform is a suit, business casual, or an actual uniform, it costs money. And that uniform is not something that you need to wear in retirement anymore. In fact, when you retire, you can wear basically whatever you want in most cases, and this means that your clothing costs actually go down. Next up, commuting costs. Along those same lines, if you are living in New York and you work every day, well, there's a good chance, especially if you don't live in the city, that you'll be taking the train in. For example, I take in Metro North. Other people take in New Jersey Transit. But all of these trains come into a central train station and people go from there. The cost of a ticket to go into New York City, at least a monthly ticket, is about $250 per month. Now, if you buy it monthly, it's $250 per month. If you buy daily tickets, one way or even a 10 ride, the cost is twice the cost of a monthly ticket. And of course, if I go into the city on the weekends to have dinner or see a play or some other activity in the city, the commute is still part of the monthly commute costs. It's a wonderful way to travel. By the way, there have been rare instances where I've bought the monthly ticket and traveled so much either for business or personal reasons that I would have been better off buying a daily ticket. But it's rare and it's part of the cost of doing business, so to speak. The problem becomes if you're used to buying a monthly ticket and you retire and you don't continue to go into the city at that same frequency. It's automatic. You pay the $250 a month in the case that I'm discussing here. Yours will be different, of course, but you're not using it the way that you did. 50% is only 50% if you're actually using it. Otherwise, it's 100% of nothing that you're getting for that ticket. So check your auto renewal for trains and buses if you have auto renew on those tickets, because many times it will be cheaper just to buy a one-way ticket out and back. Next up, peak travel costs. The biggest arbitrage in travel is arbitraging time and money. Let me explain. As a retiree, you have a lot of extra time. You can travel at different points during the day. You can travel on different days during the week, and you can even travel different weeks and months of the year than someone who is on a defined schedule. Conversely, that same person who has to get on that plane on Monday morning at 8 a.m. and get on the plane coming home Friday at 5 p.m. has very little flexibility. So the costs of those tickets are quite high. But this theory doesn't just apply to travel. Hotels are far more expensive during high season than they are during off season. And if you have the ability to arbitrage because you have the time, you can save a lot of money. If you like this video, please make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. I post once or twice a week depending on what's going on in the world. Also, if you like this video, check out that video on 6 big purchases retirees almost always regret. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.